Welcome, everybody. Good evening. I'm Rabbi Sarah Berman. It's my honor to welcome you all to Central Synagogue in our historic sanctuary. Joining us here tonight for a really important program in our winter series of Israel programming. I want to, before we begin, ask you all to turn off your cell phones or set them to silent. It's one way that we can really show up for one another and be fully present in this evening. I've already silenced mine. It will only serve as a clock tonight. This winter, Central Synagogue is taking a little bit of a shift this month in our Israel programming to bring in new voices and experiences that we haven't heard from in this fall and early winter season. In order to nurture relationships with folks who are doing incredible work, we are inviting groups like the Parents Circle, the Families Forum, to join us on our bima for a series of programs over the course of the next few weeks. Before we begin, joining with our guest speakers this evening, I invite us all into a moment of silence to honor the lives cut short in the attack by Hamas on October 7th, and since October 8th in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and beyond. A moment of silence. May their memories forever be a blessing. I'd like to welcome Shiri Orion, the head of the American Friends of Parents Circle, the Family Forum, to introduce the organization and our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Berman. Thank you for having us here tonight. Thank you to Central Synagogue and all of you for being here with us. I appreciate you talking about the shift, because so many of us have had to make a shift, whether here in the US or in Israel, in the West Bank, and in Gaza. It's my privilege to be able to introduce the Parents Circle, the Bereaved Israelis and Palestinians for Peace. It's an organization that I'm proud to be associated with and help lead here in the United States. We're an organization made up of 700 bereaved families, Israelis and Palestinians, all of whom have lost a close family member to the conflict. And instead of choosing a path of revenge and hatred and anger, which one would expect somebody to do, they've chosen a different path of reconciliation, of hope, of building trust, of empathy, of trying to understand the other side and trying to prevent this terrible thing from happening to anybody else. Before I introduce Robby and Mohamed, I want to make a request. Two requests, actually. The first one is probably easier than the second one. The first one is to take materials with you that are in the front of the room or the back of the room and sign up for our newsletter. That's the easy one. The second request is to take a moment and take off all of your beliefs, all of your political beliefs, all of your slogans, your flags, your social media posts, and put them next to you so that you can spend the next hour listening from your heart. This is a conversation that comes from the heart. This is a conversation about the human side of the conflict. And to share that side, I will introduce Robi Damelin, bereaved Israeli mother who lost her son David. She's the spokesperson of our organization. And Mohamed Abu Jafar, bereaved Palestinian brother. He lost his brother Ahmed to the conflict. And he runs our youth summer program and several other youth programs that he'll tell you about tonight. Thank you.
Okay. So before I ask my first question, I want to remind everybody watching this evening. First, this conversation is happening in this room. There's no live stream tonight. This is being recorded, so some folks will watch this later. But in this moment, we are the community sharing in this conversation. And a reminder that Mohamed's story is Mohamed's story. He does not represent every Palestinian experience. He represents his own experience. Robby does not represent every Israeli story. Robby is here telling her story. And so we listen from this place of understanding and empathy and care for the two human beings who are here with us tonight. And so why don't you tell us who you are and how you came to the Parents Circle? Mohamed, you were nominated. Ooh, Robby.
I think every time I come to a synagogue, I think of my father. All his life he tried to get me to come to synagogue and I wouldn't go. And now I find myself at synagogues all over the world, non-stop. So he must be very pleased. Thank you for coming. Thank you for caring enough to come and listen. And through a very sad, sad time for everyone. So I will tell you my story shortly because there are things that I want to tell you that bring hope and bring light and that are different from what you might be seeing on CNN or, I don't know, Al Jazeera or any of these MSNBC, Fox. Once they invited me to come to Fox News, but they didn't do any research. So it was supposed to be for 5 minutes, and like after 1.5 minutes, I was out of there. You know, they didn't let me talk. So when the army came to tell me that David, my son, had been killed by a Palestinian sniper, one of the first things that I said is, you can't kill anybody in the name of my child. I have no idea where that came from, and I didn't even know that I said it. But that was quite prophetic in what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I knew almost immediately that I wanted to do something to prevent other, particularly mothers, from experiencing this pain. Because there isn't anything like this pain. It's like somebody comes and just slashes at your heart. And that doesn't heal, but you make a decision what to do. And they found me from the Parents Circle because I was speaking at a demonstration about getting out of the occupied territories. And they invited me to come to a weekend in East Jerusalem to meet with other Palestinian and Israeli bereaved families. And I wasn't really very keen to do that because I thought it would be too painful. I didn't realize that these were the people that really understood me and that I could be who I am, and that brings me to know that lots of the work that we're going to be doing now in the Parents Circle is to visit bereaved families, because nobody brings more solace than a bereaved person to another. You can just sit and listen and understand. When I came to that weekend eventually, I remember sitting around a table and looking into the eyes of the Palestinian mothers, and I recognized immediately that we could be such a powerful force. We shared the same pain, we share the same tears. And if we could stand on a stage together and talk in the same voice for reconciliation and for non-violence, surely that must be an example for others. We are the least likely people to be speaking in this tone. So after that weekend, it really was like the catalyst for change in my whole life. I closed my office and I started to travel all over the world, and I thought I was extremely important. I mean, I spoke English after all. And you folks thought I was British. You should hear what the British think about my South African accent. So it was interesting. I found myself invited to Congress and to the House of Lords and to the Senate and to places all over the world, hip-hop concerts. Wherever I was invited, I went with a Palestinian partner, and I recognized that the message that we bring is not local. This is an international message which could be used anywhere, and now more than ever, you need to realize that you are importing our conflict into your country and creating hatred between Jews and Muslims. And I've been saying that since 2004. Don't be part of the problem, be a part of the solution. Don't take our conflict into your space. You don't need that. Don't have flags. I hate flags. They just separate us. So I was traveling and thinking that I'm really quite a big deal. And one night there was another knock on my door, and I opened the door, and there were 3 soldiers standing there. And when there are 3 soldiers, it can only mean one thing. So I kept slamming the door in their face. Eventually I opened it, and they said, "We came to tell you that we caught the man who killed David." That's when it became difficult. You see, you can go around the world and you can talk about peace and love and reconciliation, read bad poetry. Most NGOs read bad poetry and do all of these things. But do you really mean it? It's the test, because before there wasn't a face, but now there's a face. And what do I do with that? Can I be in integrity and do this job and travel the world and talk about reconciliation if I'm not willing to walk the talk? So after 3 months of not sleeping, I woke up one morning and wrote a letter to the family of the man who killed David. And in the letter, I told him about the 700 families in the parent circle who have all lost an immediate family member, and that we have this vision to create a framework for a reconciliation process to be an integral part of any political future peace agreement. You know, we signed a lot of papers on the White House lawn, but it could only lead to a ceasefire if people aren't prepared. So in fact, we are some little ants on the ground who are preparing this framework. Also in the letter, I told the family of Thaya, that's the name of the sniper, that we should meet. We owed it to our children and grandchildren. And of course, I'm not exactly the most passionate character in the Middle East. I expect to get a letter immediately within days. It took 3 years. And he told me that I'm crazy and that I should stay away from his family, and that he killed 10 people to free Palestine. But I knew that when he was a little boy, he saw his uncle violently killed by the Israeli army, and then he lost 2 uncles in the second uprising. So I think it was a path of revenge. I don't even think it was vaguely politically motivated. This was a turning point again in my life. I gave up being a victim. I felt a freedom. You know, I don't talk to myself, I don't call myself a victim. I think I'm a victor. I don't even talk about being a survivor. I'm a victor. We went to South Africa, made a film about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and tried to see what lessons we could learn. I'll just tell you one story from there. I like to tell stories. I had met a woman who went to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and she said to the people who killed her daughter, "I forgive you." I wanted to know what that meant. What's the meaning of forgiving? And if we didn't have such a lot of people, we could ask each other what we mean when we say we forgive. And we went to visit her because she'd said to these people, "I forgive you," and I wanted to know what that meant. And she said, I asked, "What's your definition?" And she said, "Forgiving is giving up your just right to revenge." And then I met the man who actually had sent the people who killed her daughter. And I thought it was going to be some kind of monster. It turns out to be this man, you know, who turns around and says to me, by her forgiving me, if you don't hear anything tonight, listen to this. By her forgiving me, she released me from the prison of my inhumanity. I think that's an extraordinary statement. And so after that, I came back to Israel trying to meet with the man who killed David. Apparently, the law does not allow that unless he asks to meet me. So I'm quite a persistent character. You know these ticks that hang on to dogs? Yeah? So I phoned his lawyer, and I asked the lawyer to please see if he could get Thaya to make application to meet me. But we haven't heard since then, and it's not all that important. I think I'm very much at peace with myself. There's so much I want to tell you about the situation now, so I'm going to stop here and say thank you.
Thank you, Robi. First of all, I'm very honored to meet you all and to be in this ancient and beautiful place. My name is Mohamed Abu Jafar. I live in Jenin, West Bank. I work at Palestinian Ministry of Health as a quality manager, and I'm also summer camp manager for Palestinian and Israeli kids with the Parent Circle. My journey started, the voice is good? Okay. Up, okay. Up, okay. So my journey started when I was 3 months, as my mother told me that in the first Intifada, the Israeli army threw what is called tear gas? Yeah, tear gas to my bedroom. And because we are, you know, a small Palestinian family, we have 4 brothers and 4 sisters, including me. So back then she take whatever she can take from the kids, and I was 3 months in my bed, and eventually some man entered the room and take me out, and she didn't know that where I am. She was looking for me, and he took me to the hospital, and I spent 3 days intensive care. Like they took the gas out of my lungs, and Robi said that I'm hypochondria. Hypochondria, yes. Okay. So, yes, this is maybe one of the reasons that I'm hypochondria, because since then I am always ill and sick, and I have 7 surgeries. So, this was my first interaction with the Israeli army. Then in 2002, when I was 14 and my brother was 16, my brother Ahmed, that we were playing in the same football team in different age categories. When the tanks entered Jenin to announce curfew, they start to shoot in the air and in the ground, and one of the bullets hit him in his neck. So he got injured, and the tank prevented anyone from helping him. And this was one of the reasons that 4 years later I studied nursing and become an intensive care unit nurse. I worked in Nablus and in Ramallah, and I just interact and saw the Israelis as soldiers and in their military jeeps and in the military tanks. And they also, one day after they killing my brother, they took our house as a sniper point, like military base, and they put us in one room and they took the whole house. And saying this, and I was 14, that they killed my brother and now taking my house. And also during my life, when I was studying in Nablus, the checkpoints, daily checkpoints, and this was me till 2006, a lot of hate, a lot of rage inside me, living under occupation my whole life. And in 2016, when I was 27, I entered my house coming back from work from Ramallah, and I saw Robi Damelin and another Israeli woman sitting in my house. I said hi and entered my room. And when they left, I came out to my mother. That she told me, I asked her why there is 2 Israeli women sitting in our house. She told me they are doing dialogue meeting, which one of them talked about her story and her loss, and one Palestinian talked about her loss, and we asked a question and we cried together. So in a sarcastic way, I told her that is it a kind of a group therapy or something that you cry together and do this kind of stuff? She told me, no, this is the parent circle and they have different programs. And my mother works with women and she had NGO for empowering women in West Bank. So she told me, no, they have different things, and one of them is the parallel narrative, which they bring Palestinian and Israelis and they talk about their narrative and they processes it in a well-organized program. So you should go, she told me. And I said yes, kind of yes, that you said. I said it to my mother to let me get out, because she will stuck with this and will force me to do it. And 1 week later, I got a call from the parent circle that you have a meeting tomorrow in Beit Jala, which is 3 hours from Jenin. 3 hours, it's not like 3 hours here, it's a lot there. I witnessed this by traveling from Washington to New York. It's a big deal to travel 3 hours in West Bank. So I phoned my mother, told her why you did this. She told me you said yes. So during this week, I was, I checked, I searched, and I looked what is the parent circle, what they are doing, and what is the program. And 10% of curiosity to meet Israelis and to know what they will talk and how they saw us, and 90% forced. I decided to go. But in the Thursday, when I get back home, I said I will not go. Then I put my phone on silent. At 6 a.m., my mother waking me up and telling me that the taxi is waiting for you. So I eventually went to Beit Jala. In the first activity, they start with introducing each other, small introduction. My name is this, and I served in West Bank in 2002 till 2005. This is an Israeli saying this while I'm sitting in the same room, and I pictured only something that maybe he's the one that killed my brother, because I don't know who killed my brother. So I left the room. I was shivering, angry, sweating, and also went to wash my face. And the facilitator came after me, the Palestinian facilitator, and told me, why you left? I told him I can't be in the same room with a soldier. He told me, you know that they are all soldiers. They went to the army. It's obligatory. And you know that before. Why you came? I told him, I know that before, but I didn't think that it will feel like this, that I will feel this anger and this, rage and sadness, because maybe this is the guy that killed my brother. So he told me, I can't force you to stay. I will call taxi, it will take 3 hours, then you can go, but please, if you can join the next activity. So I waited, I went to the next activity, and the next activity, they start to talk more about themselves. So I found about this guy that he is against what he was doing in 2002, 2005, and he's willing to peace and reconciliation. And this was my breakthrough, that I saw the humanity in the other side. And since then, I've been active in the forum. I've been in the Young Ambassador for Peace, which is a program for youth aged 18 to 35. And I've been facilitating and managing the summer camp since then. And this year was the hardest year to do the summer camp, and we will talk about it later. Thank you.
I want to ask, because you've both been active with the Parent Circle for more than a few months, you've been involved for years. How has life changed for you since October 7th? How has your work changed as well since October 7th? Mohamed, do you want to go first this time? If Robby allows it. Robby first.
So, actually, I made a promise. I have to keep this promise. The night before I left, we had a Zoom, and gloom, I call it, but the Zoom was with the women, the Palestinian women from our group. And I promised them that I would tell you what it's like to live on the West Bank now. Because everybody knows about Gaza, although many don't actually understand. Mind you, the whole world has become a major expert on the Middle East, that I've noticed. And I promised them that wherever I went, and to every meeting that I went, I would talk about what their life is like. There's been a closure in the West Bank since the 8th of October. That means that maybe 300,000 people are not allowed to come to work in Israel. That means there's no freedom of movement. Women are stuck at home with their children, and there's more domestic violence than there's ever been, and economic problems. So you can imagine what a cauldron that is, and that the settlers are running rampant without any accountability. Please know that this is a situation which is untenable and which is like this cauldron that's going to blow up very soon. And I was pleased to see that your President Biden decided to have sanctions, but it's not very effective because it can't be just sanctions to settlers that have committed crimes. There should be sanctions against the settlements because the occupation is killing the moral fiber of Israel. Let me tell you that right now. It hurts me very much to say that. And how has my life been affected since October the 7th? I haven't stopped talking. I must have been interviewed by more than 100 media outlets all over the world. And it's like walking on eggs. And your life is so intertwined in Israel with other people, and everybody knows somebody. And Vivian Silva was my friend. And she used to travel with children from Gaza to hospitals in Israel and back again, and she was part of Women Wage Peace, and she worked with the Bedouin. And we thought she was a hostage. And I thought, wow, she'll come back and she'll be the leader of the next peace movement. But it turns out that she was burnt in a cupboard in her house. But something extraordinary came out of that. Her son has now joined the Parent Circle and is talking about ending the violence, and is talking about finding a way to peace and stopping the bloodshed. That's an incredible, incredible thing to happen. Also, Ma'oz Inon, is there a problem? Ma'oz Inon, who is an Israeli, his parents were burned to death in their home in the south, and he too is talking out for peace and for stopping the bloodshed. That's incredible. And then there are the Bedouin who live in unrecognized villages, who actually came to the music festival and saved the lives of so many people. And 19 of them died, and not many people are talking about this. And some of them were taken hostage. We need to know, I live in Jaffa, and in 2021 in the war, there were terrible riots outside my house. But now there is a committee in Jaffa of Palestinian Israeli citizens and Israelis, and there has been absolutely no violence since the beginning of the war. And that's not only in the town that I live in many of the other mixed cities, it's the same story. So that's extraordinary. And it is so painful to think about why. How can somebody get to the point where they would come and do what they did on October the 7th? When you understand why, when I understood why Thaya, the man who killed my son, what pushed him to that, it isn't condoning any kind of violence. I don't condone any violence. But when I realized that if you were a kid, say you were 14 years old and you lived in Gaza, and every 2 years or so, there's a war, and you have nowhere to run, and you don't have a shelter, and you live in a circumstance where you have no hope and no freedom of movement. So what kind of adult are you going to grow up to be? And that is why you cannot kill a movement. You can only change the circumstance of that person living there so that they won't have that ambition. And think about the kids that live on the kibbutzim, on the border. They thought they were invincible. You know, they had rockets, but they had safe rooms. Can you imagine that trauma? Can you imagine the trauma of the kids who live in Ashdod, Ashkelon, all of these towns, and they live in fear of rockets? There was a rocket outside my house two days ago, but I have a safe room. I don't live in Gaza. I'm not a woman running away with my children and not having anywhere to go. We have to tell the truth, because otherwise there can never be a reconciliation. And that pain is so intense, and I'm part of the system. And in many ways, I am ashamed for what we are doing in Gaza. I cannot bear that. We have to stop this violence. We have to recognize that we have to start talking. You talk to enemies when you want to change the situation. So please, I'm asking you not to be pro-Israel, not to be pro-Palestine, but to be part of the solution. You know, we went to Georgetown. The reason that we came here, you are so polarized that the World Bank actually invited Mohamed and I to come to the World Bank because the Muslims and the Jews are not talking. Right? This is just a small indication of a huge thing that's happening all over the world, the side-taking. So we also went to Georgetown, and we had like a vigil they have a beautiful church in Georgetown. They've been our mentors for many years. And what happened is, about 200 students came. There were no flags, there were no signs, there was nothing. There were just the students and candles and a rabbi, an imam and a priest and Mohamed and I. And it was such a beautiful evening, and I had a sudden thought that if these kids would all now be harnessed into the solution and not the problem, they could create a domino effect within all the campuses which are in such trouble here. And Georgetown have promised to help us create a module which we can be using in all the campuses all over America and maybe the world. And also, the Teachers Union here are going to open the door so that we don't have to market this. That's an extraordinary thing to bring hope, because it changes things. It's no good just sitting at home and deciding and watching a miserable television. You know, go out and do something, but don't do it with flags. Thank you.
What is the question?
How has your life changed?
Yeah.
Forgot the question.
Yeah. Okay. I forgot the question. So this is my first time to US. I want to thank Michael for giving tours in DC and in New York. In the last 3 years, the situation in Jenin is very bad. I work at Ministry of Health, and the Israeli army blocking hospitals and preventing people from entering hospital whenever there is an incursion. So we started, especially during the last 2 years, to build a community-based centers for emergencies. That if a pregnant woman wants to take birth, she will take it in this center. So this kind of work that I am doing with Minister of Health, and I'm doing voluntary to train people outside, to train volunteers, and also to put up stabilization points. Since last July, this year, it was the extremist, 2023 was the extremist year ever in West Bank. We even did have an airstrike in July. It was the first since 2002. And they bulldozed most of the streets heading to hospitals, all bulldozed. And also, people in the streets are losing hope in everything because of what's happening, all the killing, and with this extreme government. While that, I was working with preparing for the summer camp, and with the summer camp kids in the program Summer Camp Continuation. And with these atrocities and what's happening, it's difficult to work in and to talk about peace and to work for peace. Especially, I have kids in the Palestinian side that living this every day. So one of the meetings for the summer camp continuation, which is a program to continue what we build in the summer camp. We build the momentum in the summer camp, like oasis of peace, that all the kids don't want this to end, this summer camp. So we build the program to continue what we are doing. And one of the meetings that we are heading to Yad Mordechai, which is a Holocaust and 1948 war museum together. In the same night, the same day, from 10 p.m. till 8 a.m., the Israeli army entered Nablus. And I have 8 kids to pick up from Nablus. Jenin, Nablus, then Jerusalem, to go to the south, to Yad Mordechai, which is near Zekim, one of the places that attacked in October 7th. So, in the same day, 10 people killed in Nablus. And it was the whole day incursion. It was all over the news. And I was following it with the kids in the WhatsApp group and checking on them. And I really didn't, because it's 8 out of 10 of the Palestinian group are from Nablus. So me and Tamar, my colleague, were like, we are checking that if we can go or not. And in the morning, eventually, all the kids came, and most of them slept in the bus because they didn't sleep at night. And I asked them in the bus, we have a chat, and they told me that, especially now, it's important to talk, especially now that they should know what's happening to us also. And we went to Lifta village 1 month earlier, which is about the Nakba. And if we are not going to go to this Holocaust museum and to see their narrative, it will be not respectful. And this kind of hope that the kids give me, that they're seeing things other than we see. And this is one of the things happened during this. And after October 7th, of course, now they ruined the street, all the streets around my house while I was in DC. And they entered the hospital 2 days ago, which I'm responsible as a quality manager for the quality of care in all hospitals. And this is one of the newest hospital. And they killed a paralyzed 16-year-old kid in his bed. And he's a patient. So this is the reality that I live in, that it's so hard to talk about peace and to work toward peace while these things are happening in daily basis. And we will talk more about what I do, I think, next. Thank you.
We have so much to learn from both of you, and I don't at any point want to cut you short, but I also do want us to hear your questions. So we will have staff on the side aisles, and if you have questions to share, they will be happy to pick those up. I am going to ask one more of my own questions. It's kind of a combination of what I was going to ask you. If you can give us one example of how the work that you do has gotten harder since October 7th, but then if you can also tell us why you stay with this work, even when it's harder. So one example of how the work has gotten harder and why you stay with it, even now.
Of course, it's become much more difficult because there's a closure. But I can tell you that it's so incredible that we have a staff of 20 people, Palestinian and Israeli. We have one of each. So it's like Noah's Ark. We have an Israeli director and a Palestinian directoress. For the first time, we have a lady who's a Palestinian. Yes, I thought so. And 2 people who deal with spokespeople and 2 educators, 2 of everything. Nobody signs anything without the other. This is a kind of way of respecting. 2 days after the war, we had a staff meeting. That's one of the most painful meetings I've ever had in my life. The pain that came out of that and the anger and the fact that each side is watching their own news, which creates a parallel universe. And so the trust has to be so deep that you're willing also to listen even if you don't agree, but to listen with empathy. And I told you about the women that all came to the group, and Mohamed will tell you, unless I better do it quickly because we don't have much time. Do you give me permission? Yes. Okay. So the summer camp, not 3 weeks before, had gone to the UN on International Peace Day and signed a charter for nonviolence. The UN, not here in Jerusalem, there's a building. They signed a charter for nonviolence and reconciliation. And then, of course, the war came, and you can imagine how angry they are. And the war is like, you know, there's no nuance when you're 14 or 15, it's black and white. And there was many stuff written on Instagram and things that were really hurtful for both sides. And Mohamed and Tamar, the 2 people who deal with the summer camp, were working uninationally. We will have a lot of work now that's uninational in order to bring people back. But the night before he left, the kids all said they want to meet up again. So that's a hopeful thing. But this is really hard work now. And we are needed more than ever. More than ever, we have to bring this message to people to understand. If you've got any difficult questions, you can ask Mohamed.
Okay, I will not stand because I can't stand this. So I have a thing about, okay, the hard thing after October 7th, that there is an article in New York Times about me and Tamar and the Berman Circle and how it was hard. I think to shortcut time, everything is in this article. It's hard, it's honest, and it's what's really happening now. And I think we should talk about the summer camp because it's hope in the summer camp. And you should talk about,
Tommy?
yes, about Tomer.
So that's my grandson. All of my grandkids have been to the summer camp. Tomer is somewhat of a spoiled brat. I mean, I took him to London, and we went to Harry Potter and the Tower of London, and he nearly finished me off, right? And I never imagined, he came to the ceremony. Every year we have the ceremony on Memorial Day, a joint ceremony, and he went to the summer camp after the ceremony, and he said, you know what, Safta, this is the best week I've ever spent. And I wanted to know why, and I thought very deeply about why. It's because the fear of the unknown there's no longer the fear of the unknown because now they know each other. That's extraordinary. And if we could do this for more and more kids, and if we could do this, you do it too, why not? You know, talk to the people you don't agree with and find out who they are, find out what their story is. I'm sorry, I never stop talking.
So your questions are
By
coming
the way,
to me. So take another minute.
Just by the way, we wanted to thank the person called Brigitte who has helped us with the summer camp. Without you, it wouldn't have happened for many years. So thank you.
So the first question from our community is about your communities. How do your communities, your families, your neighbors, your friends, how do they feel about your involvement in nonviolence and specifically in the parent circle? Do they approve? Do they disapprove? How do you handle that?
This is a question for me, I know. Yes?
It's a hard one, so yes,
Yes.
it's for you.
Okay, so my family and my friends knowing what I am doing, and they know that I am heading to US also, and I will not talk about what they told me to say here, but they are so depressed. The community, the people in Jenin are so depressed. They are losing hope in everything, and everything is now basic. The kids in the summer camp, we're doing summer camp continuation. We did a big efforts in let them understand what is war and what is peace. And one of the Zoom meeting with the Palestinian kids, we asked 45 questions that we asked each other, like the Palestinians asked the Israelis, uninationally, and the Israelis asked Palestinian. One of the questions was, what is peace? All the Palestinian kids wrote, some of them wrote one page, some of them paragraph, some of them one sentence, but all of these sentences contain one word, that peace is the freedom of movement. These kids, it's a human basic right to move freely, but these kids pictured the peace as a free of movement, and this can tell you a lot about what they are suffering from and what they are dealing with, and they are hoping that there come peace and they will move freely, and this is one of the things that keep me going. The support of the family and the kids, because the kids give me a lot of hope and give me a lot of power because they saw the humanity in the other side, and they also have more humanity than others because they don't being affected by politics and adult stuff and finance and everything. They just laugh, they just cry and have fun. And this is one of the things that we are doing in the summer camp. When they saw the humanity on the other side, they make friends, and they all are friends. And this is one of the reasons that they have problems after October 7th, because they have friends on social media, so they saw what each other is sharing. And this is what kind of work we did since October 7th. And after I came back from US, we will meet via Zoom together, Palestinian and Israeli again. I hope.
Robby, a hard one for you. Yom HaZikaron is Israel's Memorial Day. Why does the Parents Circle mark a joint Memorial Day on that same day?
You know, I think every parent has the right to commemorate their child in the way they see fit. For me, it's all about peace education. For me, it's about sharing stories from both sides as an example of the possibility for peace. I would never, ever criticize another parent who wants to commemorate Yom HaZikaron in the way that they do, but I expect to have the same respect. And I don't know what's going to happen this year. It is so painful to even begin to think about it, but we will do something online, I would imagine. And please don't be offended. Just watch it once, and I promise you will understand the heartfelt. It's so deep to suddenly see this, and it's difficult for the Palestinians as well. Don't make any mistake. Anybody that belongs to this organization, in a way, is a leader. And I can tell you that after we were banned from schools, you know, the government in its great wisdom decided to ban us from education in schools, which is absurd, because we've been working in schools for 18 years to 17-year-old kids who never in their life ever met a Palestinian. Suddenly they can hear a story. Also, they tried to stop the summer camp, and only 2 days before the summer camp were we told that we could have it because the American embassy intervened and the German embassy. All of these things happen. The government tried to prevent the ceremony, prevent the Palestinians from coming to the ceremony. So for 3 years, we've gone to the Supreme Court, and we won, which is a really nice feeling, I must say, if you beat the government. But please, commemorate the way that you see fit, and let me.
All right, one last question from our community, which kind of sums up what I would have asked to close us out as well. The work that you do is all about building trust and building relationships, and it's person to person, each individual that you work with at the camp, or that you work with among anybody who joins the Parents Circle. Do you believe, individually, each one of you, do you believe that that kind of trust can be built widely between Israelis and Palestinians? Is it possible?
If we didn't believe that, why on earth am I schlepping around the world and doing the work that we're doing? Of course we believe that. And I wanted to say one more thing, I'm sorry. It's about the hostages. It's one of the most painful things that I have experienced, is listening to the stories of those that came back and listening to the parents. And one of the things that I'm advocating for is to free the prisoners. And firstly, I'm happy to free the man who killed my son, even if he's not my captive. He belongs, and I'm talking for myself, not for the other families. But if we don't do that, and very soon, I don't know who will come back.
Mohamed, I'd love to hear your answer as well. Do you think that trust is possible? between Israelis and Palestinians, and how?
Yes, I think this is something difficult, but we are doing a crack in the wall. There is a physical wall, and there is also psychological, and different communities, different language, and to destroy all these differences, it's a lot of job. But I think every movement in the history, starting from racism to any movement, that it's always a start with brave people and always a start with the small communities. And I think it's, as she said, it's ant in the wall, but we are doing this crack, and the light will come in, and people will see that this is the way to live peacefully, because eventually we can't kill all the Israelis, and the Israelis can't kill us all. So most of Palestinians knows that we only have hope in ending the occupation and living together, because 1,300 Palestinians working in Israel, you know. If it's not politics, it's economics. So I think we can do it. It's something about hope, and the hope that I wake up every day because of the kids. I know I am youth, I'm 35, but they are the youth, they are the next generation. And I saw hope in them. I saw that for them, we should do harder work. I know it's gonna take a lot of hours, like what's happened with Robi, but for the kids and for the next generation, it's essential to keep up the work, and I hope it.
We are so grateful for you coming here, for you sharing your stories and your perspective with us. Thank you all for joining us, for being a part of this conversation. Get home safe. Thank you for being here. Thank you all.
Thank you.